Welcome to Entrepreneurs International Network, where entrepreneurs learn, network, and grow. I'm Roger Killen, the organizer. Today, Leah Coss is training us on how to build trust and connection online. Leah, I've got a few questions that will help us get to know you at a personal level. My first question is this: what impact would you like your life to have on planet Earth?
Well, I've actually got a personal mission, and that is to change the way that we value humans in society. I believe so much of just how we feel fulfilled and happy in our lives, the sooner that you find really what it is that fuels you, all comes down to the validation that you get from the world around you. When you're kids, you're looking to your teachers, your parents, your coaches. Am I doing what you need me to do to have you love me and to gain your acceptance? And of course, gotta love it with like friends and society and media, always feeling judged. If we can just change how we value people in society and realize it's not about your A's on your report card, that stuff really just doesn't have a huge impact on your value to the world. If we can change it from whether you won the race or didn't win the race, how many people you know, how many friends are on Facebook, if we can shift what actually makes a human valuable and really come together as a society to then encourage that, which I believe is being a better human and all those human skills that we embody that robots and machines and AI can't, then we're going to be able to be reaching for happiness, fulfillment. We're going to be able to lean into the things that we actually love and not the things that we feel pressured to do to be accepted.
Now, that's what I call an impact. Congratulations. Well done. Think big. Go for it. Okay. Question number 2. What is your greatest accomplishment to date?
I'll let you know in 50 years when, well, maybe 100 years when I kick the bucket, because at this stage, there's been so many. How do you say just one? And to be honest, I'm 39, I turned 40 this year, and every year has gotten so better. When I reflect on what I thought was really successful, if you had asked me 10 years ago what my success was, I could tell you exactly what it is. But those things are all of a sudden like not important anymore. They don't seem as meaningful and fulfilling when I reflect on them, and almost damaging, because I was like, wow, that's what I thought was really important to the world. So, ask me when I'm laying like this, and we'll see if, from the great beyond, I can let you know. But I certainly haven't had it yet, but every day is pretty darn amazing at this stage.
I suspect that you are maturing. Third and last question. What's the best piece of advice that you would give to new entrepreneurs based upon your 20-ish years of entrepreneurial experience?
Sure. So the biggest weight was lifted off my shoulders when I learned this first thing, and you're going to get a 2-for-1 deal. I've got 2 things that I always give as advice. The first thing is there's no right answer. I was sitting down one day and I had attended this board meeting with like the big wigs when I was in my 20s. And I'm like, whoa, this is going to be so exciting. And then when I left, I was like, they're just making it up as they go. Are you kidding me? Like, nobody has a manual. I thought there was like this magic thing, like, oh, only the smart people do this stuff. No, like you really are making it up as you go. You're just willing to try new things. You're willing to what we call fail, but really it's just a step in the process. So you don't have to have all the answers. For teachers, for coaches, for CEOs, that's not your job. You're there to facilitate the discovery of learning and trying and, curiosity. The other thing though, is that you're never done. You're never done. We keep thinking, I will be so happy when, oh, I can't wait for this to be done. But then as soon as you're there, you literally, maybe if you're lucky, recognize it, that you've arrived at whatever place you thought was a destination, but you're already wanting and wishing you had, my yacht's only 20 feet. Why can't I have the 30 feet? Like, you're just never done. So stop waiting to arrive, because especially if you're in entrepreneurship, you're playing the long game and you got to enjoy it. So if you don't enjoy it, abandon that yacht, abandon your ship.
Leah, that is indeed sage advice. Now, participants, I encourage you, if you have questions, don't shout them out. Even though you can unmute, please don't. Type the questions into the chat and I'll pose them to Leah during her talk. About every 10-ish minutes, I'll interrupt with a few batched questions. I'll ask Leah's permission to interrupt and fire her questions, and she'll either say yes or ask me to wait for a few minutes. So your job, type your questions into the chat. Now, you're going to be sent a link to the recording of this talk in a few hours, ideally Pacific time before 10 p.m., which is when I aspire to go to bed. But I encourage you to take notes anyway, because the simple act of taking notes is going to increase what you absorb by as much as 30%. And Leah is a font of wisdom, and we don't want to miss anything that she has to say. Leah, are you ready to wow us with this legendary wisdom of yours?
Absolutely, but don't set the bar that high. Let me come in and surprise everyone. Now I'm kidding. Yeah, let's get into it.
You take it away. The stage is yours for the next hour.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roger. Always a pleasure to see you. And thank you so much for having me, everyone. I really appreciate you attending tonight. Well, Roger definitely said it, grab a pen and paper, but I need to set this kind of tone for what I'm going to be going over. Nothing is going to be revolutionary on this call. Ultimately, what I'm hoping to help you gain is just some self-awareness and just going, oh, like you're going to have these epiphanies going, that's why I don't like my boss now. I always like them. I don't know why. Or that's why this employee is giving me trouble. This is why my clients aren't calling me back. Because there are certain things when, COVID hit, it was literally overnight where we had to transition to talking on Zoom. And at first we were like, this is no problem. Like, I can see you. Normally I would see you in person. I can hear you, and I would normally hear you in person. This is the same. I like to say, it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. This is not a duck. It is so different. And I just want to take a few of you back to previous transitions that we've had in this, because transitioning to online Zoom communication, we're going to have more. Like, give it another few years and all of a sudden we're going to be learning how to build trust and connection through holograms. Like, this is just another jump. And I remember that when we all transitioned to email, it was this nice, slow process, right? Like when email came out, we started using that as our number one communication. We could hug our fax machines and our phone calls and writing letters for as long as we wanted, right? We could phase that out. But when COVID hit, it was just like, you have no choice. You have to communicate now in these ways. And there's no way around it. But the thing is if you'll recall email, and I'm looking in the room at the different, like perhaps age groups that are in here, I sent my first email in college. So this was completely new to me. And when I got my first job at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I remember sending an email and I was trying to be really funny. And so I did a sarcastic joke, but as we learned very quickly, you can't convey sarcasm through an email, especially when this is before emojis. And we didn't even have the winky face. Nobody had figured out the semicolon, bracket. There was none of that. And so I just sent this email and I got a response back from my boss being like, that was completely uncalled for. We don't appreciate it. And I was like running physically to his office, which I could do. And I was like, no, I'm sorry. I was trying to be super funny. And it didn't go over well. So we've had to transition to email, then we transitioned to text, and we had to also realize that some people like to put okay, some people put K, some people put okay, period, and yet all of us use something different. So we read into it being like, oh, they did okay, period. What, are they being curt with me? Like, what, are they angry at me? Somebody just put K. What, you don't have time for me? You can't say, okay, thank you. Like, we're reading into everything, but we've now relaxed. We've had the time to transition, but Zoom, my hope for you on this call is you are going to sit here going, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that that's what they thought I was doing in around this frame, that they cannot see what's happening in my world. Meanwhile, I'm thinking I'm giving off the best of myself and they think I'm being a jerk. And so these are the things that we're going to be going over today. I'm hoping to ease this transition. And I always find there's kind of two groups of people at this stage of COVID. There's the people who are like, this is amazing. I can hug my dog. It's bring your dog to work day every day. I wear sweatpants. I don't even wear, I have like makeup. Who does that, right? Like, we have come into this place of comfort and we're like, don't make me go back. But then there's other people who are like, oh my gosh, let me see a human. I need to get into the office. Nothing is getting done. I don't feel like I'm as productive. I need out of this house. I feel like, this is just not working for me. My hope for you, especially in light of the new announcements that we've had here with COVID regulations, is that when we are able to go back to business as usual, that you will feel empowered by the choice. And it won't make a difference to you on whether you meet someone online, you meet them at a coffee shop, you go into the office. Because I have to say that before COVID, my businesses I didn't realize we were stuck in a rut. Things were going good. We were growing, right? But it was one of those things where we were like, well, let's, focus where we are. And, oh, there's a cool company in New York, but we'll get there. We'll get there. COVID happened. And all of a sudden, it was like, it didn't matter if they were in the building next to me or they were in New York or Texas or Australia. It was all the same thing. And our businesses have grown exponentially because we just got out of our heads of this localized, I can't tell if I trust somebody. I need to make sure I'm in person in order for me to really build this bond. That kind of had to go out the window. You had to be able to pivot. So that's my hope for you here today. So what are we talking about? I probably should have gone to that. Oh, Roger, I'm on my last slide because I was showing you that. So we're talking about building trust and engagement online. How did that zoom out? There we go. So building trust and engagement online through Zoom is where a lot of my stuff will talk about, but do know that this works for Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams, GoToMeeting, insert webinar platform here. And I'm gonna Roger, I'm going to kind of break some of your rules that you just set up for everybody in terms of communication. Here's the deal. My presentation is a bit of an anomaly because I'm having to teach you something while simultaneously demonstrating it to you. So if I'm not building trust and connection with you online right now, you're not going to believe anything I say. None of this is going to be helpful to you. So I want to simulate this as much as closely as possible to what you are usually doing on a day-to-day basis, whether this is meeting with clients, meeting with your team, meeting with your, maybe socializing with people, heck, even talking with your Nana once a month to, catch up with her, or hopefully it's more than that, once a week. So if you have a question, all of us are different communicators, and you'll find this in person as well, right? But what's so great about Zoom is with people with all different kinds of learning abilities, introverts, extroverts, none of that matters because on Zoom, you can connect to me by typing into the chat box. So if you want to type out your question, go for it. Other people, they want to use their voice. I'm very much a verbal person. Don't ask me to write anything out. I just want to tell you, go way faster. So if you want to do that, feel welcome, just unmute yourself, okay? Because that's going to happen in your meetings. You're not going to throw me off. You can also do a middle ground. You can type, I have a question in the chat, and then you can unmute yourself when I call on you. And now all of a sudden, you can say your full question. So there's a lot of ways that you can communicate with me here. There's also the raising hand, the coffee breaks, otherwise known as pee breaks. And because I usually talk to kids a lot, I would be amiss if I did not note the reactions. It's basically the emojis. So you can also communicate that way as well, if you like. Now grab a pen and paper, because as I mentioned, this is not going to be like massive things you're taking notes for. These are going to be personal notes where you go, oh, right, when I do this, stop it. I should do this, start this, right? And these are going to be things that are going to be hard to remember because you won't necessarily see them in a slide deck, right? Where if you watch these slides again, you're not going to be like, oh yes, that's what that epiphany was. So take those notes. Those are notes for you. Only you will understand it. Now, what are we talking about here today? These are my goals for you. I want you to be able to build trust in teams faster, but not just for you, but for them. It's so important. And we're really going to be diving deep into this. Whether you trust them or not, if you're trying to acquire clients, if you're trying to do networking, things of that nature, it's really important that you're building trust with your clients. Otherwise, they're just never going to sign up with you, right? So we definitely need to address that. And how can we do it? And what's so funny is building trust is like already a big talking point. And if you've attended a lot of seminars on how to build trust and connection in teams, unfortunately, so many of those things are now obsolete because of Zoom. So stay tuned. We're going to go through those in a very itemized way. The next is I want to help you with increasing engagement and participation. This is that response feeling that you get from the audience, but we're also going to talk a lot about your mindset and what's happening there that could be deterring participation, but also what you're actually interpreting participation as being. It doesn't mean someone's verbally talking to you. That's not the only ways you can participate in mediums like this. And then lastly, and probably most significantly, because this is where your quality of life is really going to change, and that whole empowering thing I was talking about, where we want you to feel excited about having the option of being able to meet people in person, but it's totally cool if you can't, right? Is reducing the Zoom fatigue thing. Now we call it Zoom fatigue, but again, it could be Google Hangouts fatigue, whatever it is. The assumption is, wow, now I'm on my computer all the time talking to people. It's too much blue light coming at me with these screens. But I don't know about you, but I was always on my screen before COVID. I was working on my screen. And when I wasn't working on my screen, I was probably on my phone. And if I was done work or taking a break, I'm kicking my feet up on the couch and I'm watching Netflix. Like there's screens everywhere. You can't even walk outside with like billboards and grocery store lights and whatever else. Like blue screens, yes, it is a thing. And grab yourself some good blue blockers. I have about 15 pairs now at this rate. They help. But the Zoom fatigue phenomenon that came on was not to do with the blue light. This was about the overdrive that we were kicking our brains into with the over-analysis going, what is happening on the other side of the screen? Are they doing their work? I just asked them to do something, but I don't even know if they're listening to me. It's a black screen. Do they not even care? They're not even showing up today. What is happening here? And it's this over-analysis where you would, before you were putting out a certain amount of output and you would get a certain amount of input. I could visually see when I'm talking, you're going, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, cool. Let me go do that. And you would see them physically go and start doing whatever it was you had just finished talking about. And you felt this connection. Now you're putting out the same amount of energy, sometimes more now, but you're not feeling the same feedback. You don't feel like you can walk past and go, yeah, they're working. Ah, awesome, cool, okay. Yeah, I don't see, if you had a lot of culture things in your offices or wherever you were doing business, you didn't feel this energy around you. And it's exhausting. So we're going to be definitely addressing that today. But I want to quickly just note on who the heck I am and why the heck should you listen to me? Well, you don't have to. It's the first thing. I also don't want to position myself as an expert because this is forever evolving. But what I do have is a significant amount of hours under my belt of having to build relationships with people without the ability to use visual cues. And we're going to be talking a lot about the visual cues that we see on the camera and just how deceiving it really is. But way back when I talked about working at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I was having to sell franchises to people all across North America. We didn't even have hardly camera options on our flip phones. Like that was a real new thing. So we certainly did not have webcams. And I had to sit with my little headset talking to some person in Florida at 23 years old. They're like 45. I'm telling them, yeah, you should totally quit your job, move you and your family over there, start a business. You might fail, but it's going to be awesome. And by the way, give me $200,000 to do it. And I had to build their trust in order for that to happen. But here's the deal. Whether you're a coach, teacher, I do this talk a lot for teachers, career advisors. If you're building relationships with clients, essentially what we're all trying to do, even as a parent to a child, here's the path I would love to show you. I believe there's gold, whatever that gold is at the end of the trail, starting a business, making money, having a better relationship with your family, insert whatever it is that you are offering or building a relationship with there. Please trust me so that you'll follow the path. But if you have kids, you know that if they don't trust you or don't want to do it, they won't. And that's what happens with your team. That's what happens with your clients and prospects, most importantly. So I was able to do that, and that was lovely. But where my real training came is when COVID hit. I mentioned something about kids there. I teach kids between 7 and 13. If you think it's difficult on Zoom to keep adults like yourselves engaged online, imagine a kid who's 8 years old with every distraction in the world around them. They're just like, you don't even see them in the camera half the time because they're upside down. They're running around the room. and so we had to not only boot camp this and go, how do we connect with these kids again? But then we had to document it in a way we could teach our facilitators how to do it as well. And that is really what I'm bringing to you here today. So let's jump in to kind of, I guess, if you will, the content. And I start a little bit backwards. I just want to give you a bit of bonus tips first. Normally these come at the end, but it's really going to set some context. This is not just you hosting a meeting like you used to do. You are now a one-man production crew. If you were doing a public speaking event, like if I was doing this for Roger in person, Roger would have handled the meet and greet. He'd have somebody at the door who would be able to greet everybody, who would let them in, let them know where they can sit. Roger would have the lighting, the audio, the visual, everything would be already set up. And I would come in and just get to do my thing. But here I have Roger, but I don't always have Roger, right? You don't always have Roger. I'm normally having to admit people in, welcome them. I have to check the chat. I have to check, is anyone in the waiting room? I have to not only worry about my computer, my audio, my visual, my slides, but I have to make sure that you've got everything set up too. You know, if you have a bad internet connection, if you don't know how to use Zoom, then that's also a struggle. So go easy on yourself and just set the tone that this needs to be fun. It needs to be funny when things go wrong. I will say this, it's happened to me twice now and everybody thought it was a bit because I go through this whole rampage of like, everything can go wrong and just blame it on Zoom. But at like last 5 minutes of this chat or this seminar that I've done, my microphone cut out. And I was still going and everybody's like, oh, this is just a bit. She's just proving a point. And it was like, no, like it legit went out. So now I have backup mics and things like that. Laugh at yourself, set the tone, be human. So much easier for people to connect with people when they feel like you're just a human like them, right? Where things go wrong. And in this day and age, we also have more scapegoats than anything else. You can blame it on Zoom, blame it on TELUS, Shaw, Rogers, whatever your provider is. You can blame it on so many things. So don't worry about people looking at you like you've done something stupid. We're all going through this together. All right. So, natural tests of trust. Traditionally, there's a few things that we look to, but not consciously, to determine if we can trust somebody. So if I go to buy a car and the car salesman will not look me in the eye. Instead, he's looking up. He's looking at my husband. He's looking at the ground. He's looking over my shoulder. I'm not buying the car from the car salesman, man. I just can't trust him, right? And where did that come from, right? It's been this evolution for like literally hundreds of years that has become ingrained in our brains. Go, if they don't look you in the eyes, you know, you can't trust them. But now we have so many people with different learning abilities. We have things like Zoom that our brain has not caught up to realizing that is not actually always the way you can build trust. Handshakes. Is it firm? Is it soft? Is it floppy? Is it too hard? Right? We're judging them. Verbal communications. So if we went to Starbucks, I could go, oh yeah, oh totally, yeah. And I'm giving you these verbal cues. But right now, all of you could be giving me a yeah, oh preach. You could also be calling me an idiot. This is stupid. Why did I show up? Do you think they'll notice if I leave? Like there's all this stuff and I have no idea. You're on mute, right? Energy from people, fidgeting. You sit down at a meeting and somebody's knee is bouncing under the table, which is vibrating your coffee. And you're like, oh, this person's nervous, right? I can sense it. I can see it. I cannot tell if you were sitting cross-legged, if you're sitting on the floor. Jillian's got this beautiful background, but for all I know, she's standing on one foot practicing yoga. She could, there's no way of knowing. And posture is a big sign, especially if you're in a coaching role. You're looking to those cues to go, are they okay today? They're kind of hunched over, right? Skin tone, eye tone. Are they feeling okay? Maybe there's perspiration on their brow because they came running, because they're running late to our appointment and they ran from the parkade and they sat down and they're like, I'm like, whoa, it's cool, man. Take a breath, grab a coffee. You're good. You're good. I can't do that on here because I don't know if you're breathing heavy. I don't know if you're sweating, and God bless Zoom. It has this beautiful filter that gives me a perfect complexion every time I do this talk. So none of this applies anymore when we are trying to meet on Zoom. So what does that mean for you? And how do we really overcome this? So this is where hopefully we're going to start to recognize this. What's so great about this is that All of you probably in the last 24, 48 hours have both been a guest and probably hosted a meeting, right? And that meeting could just be a one-on-one. Hey, I'm just catching up with a team member, a client, or whatever the case is. So you get the perspective from both sides. And this is where the awareness will come in. So the first thing that we have to do in this is make a really critical choice on what we want to achieve with this interaction. So this one it's a temporary one, okay? Because people get a little scared when I say this. But when you're sitting down, and for this, we're also going to presume that you are the host. You are the person who is getting the meeting going, delivering the seminar. You're the person trying to interact with the client. You need to make the choice. Do you want to put their comfort and ability to feel like they can build trust with you first? Or do you want to put your own trust, your own need to feel like you can trust the person above theirs? And there's a reason that this is a choice. And the first example that I'm going to use to really demonstrate this is eye contact. It is 100% impossible for you to make two-way eye contact through Zoom. But here's an example. So I'm going to just look on my screen here. So Barbara's lovely photo that she has on here, I'm going to look at Barbara on my screen. And I am just giving my all to Barbara because I'm looking her in the eyes and I'm like, Barbara, man, this is awesome. Let me share with you what you should do. But Barbara is going, what are you looking at? I'm not feeling connected with you right now. Like you're where are you looking, right? But if I look into the camera, I can't see Barbara. But Barbara feels like I am trying to engage with her. In fact, I can now make eye contact with all of, 40 people in the room. I can make eye contact with 40 people at once. Really helpful when you're doing this with kids, because as you know, in a classroom, the moment you turn your back, who knows what's happening behind you? But in this situation, all of them feel like I can see them. The irony is I can't see any of them because I'm looking into the webcam. Why is this important? Well, because I mentioned how our brains have had hundreds of years of evolution, triggering this as this is how you can tell if you can trust somebody. Once you train yourself out of this, you no longer have to make that decision, because I just don't really, I'll use my peripheral, I'll do a scan of the room on occasion, but for the most part, I've trained myself, I look into the camera. There's a lot of trickle effect as to why this really, really helps you. But that two-way eye contact. So just a quick demonstration again, because Roger, I'm on speaker view, right? Where I'm spotlighted, you can only see me. Okay,
right.
cool.
Yes.
Normally I get people to switch between views, but this is great. You've already got it going. So yeah, so if I'm looking, and I'm looking at Eric right now, and Eric's chilling, right? And I'm like, Eric, what's happening, man? How's it going? And I'm like, why is Eric not responding? Like, does he not like me? And meanwhile, Eric's like, what are you looking at, man? Like, I just feel this detachment. And it's not even on a conscious level. It just feels detached. But now I'm looking at my camera. Now I'm really trying to demonstrate to you that I'm trying to build connection, and I can't see you. So one of the things that comes up as a common question is the plague of the black screen. And I will say this is I see that there is something in here from Laura. So Laura, I will get to your question or comment that's in there in a moment. So black screens. Right now, we've got like almost a 50-50 going on here of people with screens on and people with black screens, right? But there's been a couple times where, you know, Jill's gotten up, she had to go get something, right? Other people are like looking and doing something. But you know what? I bet anything, Tom right now, Tom, you're probably doing squats, right? You're like, I'm going to multitask. I'm doing squats while I listen to this. I don't need to, you know, what do I need to have my camera on for, right? Other people are going, I just need to fold these invitations for some sort of event. I'm going to fold some laundry, right? Multitasking, right? Having the black screens, over speculating on what, wait a minute. What's it? Annabelle, what are you looking at? Annabelle, what are you looking at right now? Huh? What's happening? Oh, Carrie, oh my gosh, am I stressing you out right now? What are you thinking, right? I'm looking and I'm just going, do they like me? What they're saying, like, are they receiving this well? And we are in over analysis mode. I'm also judging people like Kevin, going, Kevin didn't even just, he isn't here. He's not showing up. What kind of team member is Kevin? Come on now, Kevin. I'm just bugging you, Kevin. I'll pick on a lot of people in this, you'll notice. So, you know, here I am bugging Kevin and assuming Kevin's doing the worst. Meanwhile, Kevin's going, you know what? Lay off. I'm on my 4th back-to-back meeting. I had to take my laptop into the bathroom just so I could have a pee break. I haven't eaten. I haven't showered. I don't want to be on the camera. So Kevin, I'm judging as being lazy, not a team player. What's happening, Kevin? But Kevin's actually working twice as hard. You know, there might be someone there with a kid that they're trying to coddle. They've got a dog that pooped in their shoe and they're trying to clean that up, but they're still showing up. So we need to get rid of the overanalysis and thinking that we can reliably judge what's happening in this frame, which is really this big, when meanwhile, you know, Barbara could be sitting there with a cast on her leg. I have no idea, but she's been through some traumatic event, but I can't see her leg, right? There's too many things happening. And that was already a thing when we could meet in person. We had someone on my team, her father, he was diagnosed with cancer. He had 3 weeks to live. He also contracted COVID, so his family couldn't see him. And that happened. You don't know. If COVID has taught us anything, there's too much going on. If we look into the camera, you could all have a black screen. I don't care. You could all get up and literally walk over to get a coffee, which is right next to your computer. And I'm no longer going, did they leave? Did they not like me? What the heck? This is where that Zoom fatigue comes in. We're going to turn the tables later in this conversation to talk about how you might be giving those presumptions to the people you're trying to engage with. But it's so important for you as a speaker to stay in flow. And really, what would happen? So say everyone was a black screen. Do I go, you know, if nobody really wants this, I'm just not going to do this. Are you going to do that? No, you still have to deliver your best self. So why not stay in flow? Why not just, you know what? Here's a tip. Don't even look at your Zoom. Put your slides on your screen. So and don't screen share. We'll get into that the whole time, but you can put a picture of somebody on your screen if you wanted to. Don't even look at your Zoom screen. It just doesn't serve you. So hopefully that's an example for you why it's so important in the beginning that you have to make that choice. Whose comfort are you going to prioritize, yours or theirs? Because now at this point, just like if you were to go blind, for example, midway through life, all of a sudden your other senses, your touch, your smell, your hearing is going to heighten. That's what we need to train your brain to do. So now when I'm trying to engage with somebody, I'm no longer relying on my visual judgment of them, but I'm listening for tone of voice. If they're on my team, I don't care if they have a screen on, I care if you get your work done. Good job, Jimmy. So glad you showed up and you got that done. I don't care that I didn't see you the whole time. There's people on my team. I've maybe seen like their profile picture because they sent it to me, but they just prefer to not have their camera on, right? It's okay because they're doing really, really quality work. So that's the first thing. Now I want to get to this patient question that's been sitting in here from Laura. Distance education has been dealing with these issues for the past 30 or 40 years. Adobe Connect, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, yes, Google Hangouts. It's not new software. It is new to the masses, yes. So cultural, societal, contextual, yes, for sure. There's a lot of things that are very new issues. What is new is that these same problems are being experienced worldwide because of COVID. And yes, what if anything have we really learned, or are we just talking about an old problem? Yes. So anytime you look at a really big issue in society, take whatever big issue you want, often things are a pendulum. Because if it's not, it's kind of like if you're cooking and you got 4 pots on your stove and something in the oven, and one of them starts burning, which one are you gonna go for first, right? You're gonna be like, oh, the peas are fine. I gotta get the roast out of here because it's burning. So until the house is on fire, often as a society collective, we're going, there's other fires that we have to put out first. But what I'm so excited about Zoom is talk about inclusivity, is now we have people who are introverts that can participate just as much through things like the chat that they could never do at an in-person event. We have kids who have, ADHD or something like that. Kids who need Audible. That kid or person that you sit next to that does this all seminar, you can't hear any of them. You could fidget your life away, whatever you want to do. I can't hear you. There's people who have different coping mechanisms. I mean, there's people where they're like, I need to move, right? Think about the child who's now an adult who has been forced to sit in a chair for their meetings and you're not allowed to get up until we're done. They can now have a treadmill walker. They can be doing squats. They can do what they need. When it comes to the audible visual, you're absolutely right. So I mentioned, people with different learning abilities or perhaps on the spectrum where eye contact is a thing that they just don't do, but it doesn't mean they don't have value. Now, if we can rewire our brains to not rely on those visual cues, this could end up being a great launch pad to help. But again, this is information that you are getting, not the rest of the world. So how do we share this? So I do encourage all of you to share Roger's recording of this. Don't hide these things. Also, don't get mad at others when they're not making eye contact with you because they're not looking in the camera. They don't know these things. So yes, thank you for that perspective and question, Laura. All right, let's jump into what's next on my list here. Now, how do you retrain yourself? All right, so retraining yourself it's fun, okay? Everything has to be fun if you're wanting it to work. So do you have a spouse? Do you have a child? Do you have a pet, celebrity crush, whatever it is? Grab a photo of them and put it up behind your webcam. And if you have none of the above, just make a smiley face. You'll notice that babies, if you've ever been around them, they just are fascinated by faces. And we never actually grow out of that. That's why when you're in a Zoom meeting, you might be looking at other people, but you know who you're usually looking at? Yourself. How do I look? How am I coming across? Do I have anything in the background? Okay, yeah. So you're more often than not looking at yourself, and we just love faces, and yours is the most familiar, comfortable one that's out on the screen, right? So if you can take any kind of picture, put it up behind your webcam, that will be that visual cue and that face of hopefully someone you like. Heck, put a picture of yourself up there if you like. And that will be the visual cue to be able to start looking into your camera instead of onto your screen. But we crave that peer validation. So one question that I want to touch on here about the black screens that often comes up around this time is, can we mandate that people just put their videos on? Not for my sake, but for, everybody else's, right? And I always ask, well, what is the reason for that, right? And how I usually put it is, if you were to deliver an in-person event, we would normally say, okay, everybody, the event's starting, please put your phones on vibrate, and we're gonna get going. But of course, what happens is somebody's phone goes off, right? And then you're like, gosh, you're that person. And then as you're doing your thing, they pick up their phone and 3/4 of the audience are all on their phone. Now, some of them are taking notes. Some of them are looking up links and Googling things that you've been talking about. Others are just frankly not interested in what you're saying. Right? Some are there not because they want to be, but because they had to be. So there's all different reasons. But that's like you stopping your conference and being like, can everybody just put their phones down? You can't control that. And it's going to work counterproductive to building the trust with the audience that you're wanting. Right? And I often do this talk for universities in which career counselors are on there. And so if any of you are in a counseling or advisory role, I want to also mention this. One comment was mentioned that, well, as a counselor, I need to visually see them because I need to make sure that they're okay, right? I need to make sure they're not in harm or they're not, in major distress. Well, much like if that same person came into your office, there'd be physical signs, right? They'd have their hair in their face, probably. They'd be like hunched over, arms crossed. Hey, what's happened, Kevin? Yeah, I'm not feeling, I'm here. I've showed up, right? You wouldn't say to that person, can you put your hair back for me and stand up straight so I know you're okay and I feel more comfortable with the situation? Then we'll get into what's wrong. You wouldn't do that. In fact, you wouldn't even say, you look terrible. What's wrong? You wouldn't say that either, right? Instead, what you would say is, this person has something going on. Let's just see if we can find out how, but we're going to go around it. We're going to say, how are you today? What's happening? Yeah, awesome, cool. What'd you do yesterday, right? Same thing. If I said, let's see, who haven't I picked on? Osta, or no, I said that wrong. Astuco. Turn your camera on, man. I have broken all trust with that person. I have told them my comfort is more important than yours. I don't care what's happening in your room. I don't care what's happening in your world. I need you to participate the way that I've mandated that is acceptable. And that's just not ever, it's always going to work against you. But of course, you are able to set whatever rules you want. But I always equate the black screen to the cell phone. You can't control what other people do. If you spend more time fretting about that, you're just going to throw your whole presentation out the window. All right. So actually, one thing I'll do is I'll just stop right there. Is there any questions that anyone had on eye contact or any of the stuff that we've talked about so far? Love this. So Miguel, I can see that someone with a DI personality from DISC would find it easy to connect with others through Zoom, but what advice would you give to those with SC personality so they can feel comfortable and build connection? So I'm not going to pretend to remember all of what SC was on there, but I think I remember generally speaking where you're going at. So it's funny because when we first logged on, Roger goes, Leah, I think you're a lot like me. You're an introvert who's an extrovert when you have to be. What's really cool is I am in the safety of my home right now. If somebody doesn't like what I'm saying, I know they can't throw anything at me. I know they can't, do anything. And frankly, if somebody started, Ramona, are you going to start yelling at me? Mute. Try and unmute yourself. God controlled you, right? Like I have a certain amount of comfort here. Now I'm animated and sometimes that can come across as, oh, I can't do that. But if you can, we haven't gone through all of the tips yet, but just looking into your camera will help, hopefully, to reduce the amount of anxiety that you feel of eyes looking on you. And that's why I say, don't even feel like you have to look at your Zoom screen. You can look at a beautiful ocean picture while talking to people and just use auditory. We used to use the phone a lot, right? It's the same thing. We can still communicate the same. And it's really about recognizing how you're coming across to the other side. Looking into your camera when you're talking, because you know that they probably are looking at you and some of the other things that we're going to go over. So how about I jump into those and then we'll see if some of those build some more tips for you that can help with that SC personality on DISC. All right, so I mentioned how we're going to start developing, tone, volume, voice. Are they doing their work? Those are the things you want to start measuring people on whether they're trusting you. When I was selling franchises and had my fun little headset on, I knew if somebody was probably going to close because they were getting done the work I asked them to. They showed up for the meetings. The tone, was it going up or down? Were they hesitating? Well, I don't know, maybe. I'm gauging things based on what they're actually saying, as opposed to how I'm trying to read through their words, right? But I want to give you a couple of technical tricks that you can use, especially for the one-to-oneers. The one question that I didn't ask, which I usually do, is would you say that primarily you do one-to-one meetings more or one-to-many? So one-to-many is you talking to a group, teaching, a training, maybe it's your team, or are you doing more one-to-one? So if you can put either a one or a many in the chat. So we got Tim who says one-to-many. That'd be awesome. I want to make sure that I keep this relevant. So please feel welcome to bring up questions. If I don't bring up an example, feel welcome to say, hey, what about this occurrence, in the many situation? I try to make sure that this covers both. A lot of one-to-ones, a couple of one-to-manys. Either or both. Yeah, there's going to be somewhere there's both. Cool. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to show you a trick, and this only works in Zoom. I've actually had a meeting with Microsoft Teams to be like, guys, you got to get your stuff on par here. Same with Google Hangouts. It just doesn't work this way. But I'm going to show you a trick that you can do in Zoom if you're having a one-on-one meeting. Because when you're a coach, you want to build rapport as well, right? And so if, say, like a cat jumps in the background, you could be like, oh, your cat's adorable. Oh, I've got that book. What did you think of that book? That can really be a way of feeling connected when you can kind of see what's happening. But again, you don't want to be looking down like this. So in Zoom, if I had the one-to-one meeting open as a full screen, it would actually have my buddy Corey here, side to side. But if I shrink my Zoom screen to be narrow, it'll stack our videos, and it always places my guest at the top, which is right below where my webcam is. Now, if any of you have seen Seinfeld and the close talker episode, do not be a close talker, okay? Because a close talker would be this. So if I'm talking too close to my webcam and I look into Corey's eyes or even at the top of his head, it looks disconnected. But if I look at the same spot and I cheat myself further backwards, it can still feel like I am engaging with Corey because he's right underneath my webcam. So that's just a really quick tip there for trying to build relationships on the one-to-one. All right, let's switch back here. Reducing screen share time. Oh, the irony, because I just started screen sharing again. Okay, so right now, you're at an event, right? Now imagine this was Roger hosting an in-person event. And you showed up to the party and there was only 4 people there. You'd kind of look around and be like, oh, hope if I leave now, they're going to notice there's only 4 of us. Clearly nobody else thought this was going to be beneficial because nobody else came. All right, I guess the next hour or 2 of my life is committed, It's not fun to go to a party when there's not a lot of people there. And there's something to be said about peer-to-peer validation. So if you screen share the entire time, and you'll notice I very much bounce back and forth, is because it changes what people are looking at and it revalidates to everybody in the room. Even if you were all black screens and there was just names all over the place, everybody can look around and Daryl's going, oh yeah, cool. There's like 30 other people, 40 other people in this room. Cool. Okay. I'm not the only one at the party, right? So that helps with the energy. But here's the other reason. Remember the person I was talking about, Kevin, he's still doing squats over there. So Kevin's doing squats and all of a sudden he sees his screen go from black to white. He's going, what happened? Oh, okay, cool. Okay. Goes from black to white. What happened? What's going on the screen? It helps, and some of us zone out, right? One of us is just sitting there going, oh yeah, what was happening? Wait a minute, something happened. Zips them out of it, right? It gives them something different to look at. So make sure your party is not just 4 people, right? Let them see who's actually there and feel that kind of collaborative energy going on. It still works even if nobody has their screens on. All right. So let's see. Just seeing if there's any questions. Nope, just all comments on that. Cool. All right. Let's jump back over into this. And next is my favorite. Their perception is your reality. So a lot of this has been talking about things that you can change because we're trying to help them feel prioritized in terms of building trust, right? But there's still so many things where we create this perception. We've talked about how we can only see what's in their frame. And so we're judging them, but they're judging you. So here's the first one that always makes me laugh. Now, some of you are from Vancouver, and I always have to say this because this is one of the most extraordinary women ever. She's a hard freaking worker, but they were putting together a bunch of webinars that ended up being released to entrepreneurs all over, I think North America actually, but certainly in Canada. And she basically was interviewing incredible entrepreneurs, getting a lot of hacks, and it was recorded, and then people could have it and find it. The problem is in this particular series, this was how she came into frame. So I call this the talking head syndrome. This is where, much like we were talking about posture before, right? If somebody's leaning in and engaged, which is what this person looks like. So the irony is she was interviewing someone who does PR, right? And so obviously this person is very much aware of how she's coming into frame. She's got her hands in the window. There's something about, when you can't see someone's hands, you're like, where are your hands? I don't trust you. Where are your hands? What are they doing? And so she's got her hands in frame. The only thing that could be tweaked is she's looking at her screen instead of into the camera, but she's, she looks like she's engaged. Whereas over here, for all we know, she could be wearing the most gorgeous gown. She could be sitting up. She has got like just so much stuff on the go and she's just delivering the best interview of her life, but she looks like she's slouching. And I know she's not because she's like in a high top chair, but she looks like it. And it just gives the impression that maybe they're not as interested in this as I thought. My favorite is I do have one person on our team who's notorious and he always has his camera here. So we've never actually seen his full face except in his profile picture, right? So how are you coming across in frame? Now, I actually have a different webcam that's hooked up because it makes for a wider view. If you're using the standard one on your computer, it tends to zoom you in a lot more. So check on your positioning. Just make sure that if you do end up having to cheat yourself backwards, that you have a microphone that will still pick up your voice. All right, good old talking head. Now, distractions. Distractions are interesting. Now, I'm not talking about, oh, my cat jumped onto my lap and now I'm distracted. I'm talking about the dings, ding, ding, that goes off. So when I'm doing a presentation like this, I've closed my calendars, I've closed my Slack and put it on snooze. But here's the culprit that gets us every time. If you're like me, you take your phone and you put it right next to your computer, right? Face up, that way if somebody, messages, that's cool. The problem is if you forget to put it on vibrate, if you get a message coming through, it sounds so pleasant on your end. And you go, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me turn that off. But for them, you've placed your phone right next to your microphone, and it sounds like the walls are caving in on them. It's like, boom. And if they're wearing headphones, they now hate you. Their ears are just ringing now from that ding dong that just happened on your phone that was so gentle on your side, but it's coming through the microphone in such an amplified way. So make sure that you're not just remembering to turn off your calendar stuff, but your phone. And in fact, even if it starts to vibrate next to your computer, remember it's so much louder for the person that you're talking to. So best to put it on something soft so it can vibrate. I've actually got mine on a holder so it sits suspended in the air. All right. If it's not in frame, it doesn't exist. This is the greatest thing ever. Okay, so for this, I'm actually going to switch between my cameras here. Now, if you were in person and you met, somebody came to your office and it's a client and you're like, okay, awesome. You know what, Marina, we're going to just go over some stuff. So tell me about you. Okay, let's talk. And you start taking notes, right? They can see that you're taking notes. And that's a sign that you're paying attention and you're engaged and you know what's happening. The problem is let me switch my cameras for this. All right. This is what taking notes looks like on Zoom. And what that looks like is you're on your phone or you're doing something else. And so that person now has this seed of doubt going, do they even care? Like, are they paying attention? What are they looking at? Another one, dual screen people. Are you watching a YouTube video, funny cat videos? What's happening? Or you're taking notes on your computer. And they're going, what are you surfing the web? Like, are you answering emails right now? Are you kidding me? So if it's not in frame, it does not exist. Let me switch back cameras here because I hate that camera. So yeah, if it's not in frame, it doesn't exist. Now, even if that client goes, okay, no. Ramona always takes notes. She's probably taking notes right now. She probably is. But maybe she's not. She's got a kid. Maybe her kid did something bad. Maybe her mom's not okay. Maybe she's just not into this anymore. You've placed a seed of doubt in their mind. And it's just so unnecessary, right? So how do you overcome that? You over communicate. Here's another notorious one. To me, I'm like, here's my camera. And again, if I was on my other camera, it narrows my field, but I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to grab something really quick. And I would just go over here and I just want to show you my plant, but I've walked out of frame and you're like, where did you go? And then meanwhile, I can still hear you. I haven't thought twice about it, but I've created that question of doubt in their mind that I'm completely distracted. Or you said something and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to look that up. I got to send you this link. You're going to love it. So I'm doing all these things that normally in person would be an indication that I love what's happening right now. Meanwhile, you look like a jerk. You look distracted and you look like you're just not into this, but you didn't mean it. It's just not in frame. So be very aware. And here's all you have to do to overcome that. Over communicate. This is awesome. Okay, well, before we get started, I'm just going to take some notes. So tell me what's happening. And what I'll also do is I try to do this instead. So that when I do take notes, my pen is always in frame and it just, it's that thing that they just notice, right? Without noticing. And they go, oh yeah, so when her hand goes down, she's not doing anything except taking notes. She doesn't have a phone in her hand. Doesn't matter. I trust her. So just over communicate. Oh my gosh, you just said something incredible. Keep talking. I just want to grab this link because it's going to blow your mind. Right? Just one line. That's all you need. All right. Oh, I love it. Barbara asking about virtual backgrounds. All right. So I'll always preface this with, you can do whatever the heck that you want. Okay. Now it really depends on what the situation is, but we're going to presume that you're the host. Your or even if you're not the host, you could be interviewing for a job, whatever the case is, but your objective is to build trust in the other person and a rapport. Now, I use the example of, especially if you're a coach, right? Sometimes you're this mystical creature that has all the answers, or you're supposed to, that's what I'm paying you for kind of thing, right? It's like a kid when they look at their teacher and they're like, wow, Mr. Jones, he's just like this being that's like mystical because he's not a human, he's my teacher. But the moment you find out that Mr. Jones, oh, I play soccer with your son, you have a cold today, you're a human, it like demystifies them, and now they're a human that they feel like they can build rapport with. Likewise, if I have some crazy stuff happening in the background, there was one time I had like a screen up because I was doing some videos, and people were like, oh, that's really cool, what are you working on? I'm like, oh, I'm working on this. And so it's kind of like the I can't see your hands thing. I can't see what's happening behind you. Is there a drug deal going on behind there? Are you a slob? What's happening, right? And frankly, in my opinion, even if I had a boatload of laundry sitting next to me or whatever the case is, like, and lunch is sitting there, there's like 5 boxes of Panago pizzas sitting there that I've been like eating because that's my diet for the last like however long because I'm working so hard. Like, that's kind of funny. And it's letting people into my life, and they're like, oh, laundry's backing up. Yeah, totally. Like, whew, it's crazy, right? You're human. You're building rapport, right? So obviously don't have things that are not appropriate to have in your background, and we won't name what those things are, but be aware. But to me, when you have that virtual background, it can sometimes feel like you're hiding something because you're not letting me in. You're not letting me get to know you. Right? So don't be worried because you don't have a plain wall. We've got Nova on here. He's got closet doors behind him, right? Well, you can turn it so we can see your TV or your messy kitchen. It's totally okay. But again, it'll be context. If you're going for an interview, probably best to go with the closet doors and not your crazy laundry pile, right? But if you're a client that you're trying to build a relationship with, I'm okay with them seeing into my world within reason, like one that I'm aware of, like, this is what you're seeing. So those are just my thoughts. Yeah, but it really will depend on your situation. But again, it's just my opinion. You can totally do whatever the heck you want because you know your business and your clients best. All right, let's jump back over. This last one is so critical. Ending your meeting too fast. So for those of you who are from the rotary phone period, you know who you are. Love those phones. Really novelty watching a teenager these days try to dial one of those phones. What was so satisfying about those phones is if you were really over the person who was talking, you could hang up on them and it sounded thunderous, right? It was like, you're like, yeah. And then we got the cell phone and it was like, I hate you. Oh, it's so not satisfying. Now you can hang up on people again. So if ever you're about to have an aggressive conversation with, like, I don't know, a partner or a friend or a business partner, and you're like, I need them to know how angry I am, do it on Zoom. You're going to totally hang up on them. It's abrupt. But when it comes to your team meetings, when it comes to networking meetings, when it comes to events where people used to get to see each other in person and now that they can't, what happens at the end of the meeting is I would, if this was my meeting, Roger, and not yours or even yours, you'd be like, okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming. So good to see you all. Click. But meanwhile, Barbara's midway going, Annabelle, so good seeing you. I can't wait till this is all over. Jill's talking to Kevin going, Kevin, sorry, man, I'm going to get that stuff to you. Sorry, I'm going to send you that email. And this is their one chance in your team meeting to actually say hi. And like, how's it going? Let me communicate with you, something that would be so much faster to just say now than writing you an email. If you hang up mid this, it's ruined all of the trust you just finished building with that client. And there was a weird phenomenon. I don't know if any of you felt it, but it was like when you're in a Zoom meeting in the beginning of COVID, you're like, I'm the first one out of the room. I have places to go, not you. And it was like this race to see who could like exit out the fastest. My general rule of thumb is if you are the host of the meeting, meaning it's your Zoom room and you have that God power control of the room, you should, within reason, be the last one to leave. Now, I say within reason because I do this with kids, and kids like to be annoying sometimes and be like, I'm going to be the last one. And then they're battling and I'm like, you're all going to go. So the general rule of thumb is once you've said your goodbye, everyone, so good seeing you all, bye. I just pretend like I'm really having trouble finding the mouse. Bye, bye, okay, bye. And at least 10 seconds. But what if you actually have to go? I have a back-to-back meeting, I got to go. Over communication. Thank you so much, everyone. It's so good seeing you. Oh, I have a meeting right after this. So sorry, I have to close the room, but feel welcome to join each other in another room. I will talk to you all later. You're amazing. Bye. Nobody hates you now. But I sit on the board and of a company, and this just happened every time. It was the only time the board got to say hello and talk to each other. And all of a sudden we'd be like, okay, bye everyone. So good. So good seeing you. Okay, well, peace out, and it just felt, now it was completely unintentional, but it's abrupt. It really, it's jarring. So don't do that. Don't do that. Now, I have one last slide for you, but I will encourage all of you, if you have any questions for me, please type it into the chat here. All right. These are really, really small but mighty things. Can they unmute themselves? Anybody have any questions? Can't unmute myself. Kids will tell me very loud and clear that they can't unmute themselves, and it's because I've put the God controls on, meaning they can't unmute themselves. So make sure that you don't have that on. Because adults are not the same way. They'll go, oh, I can't unmute myself. Okay, it's too much of a hassle. I just won't ask. I just, oh well, wasn't that important, right? So make sure you've got that going on. Bottle of water, give space to respond though. So sometimes we ask a question and in person we go, does anybody have any questions? Okay, cool, let's move on. Here, you can't do that, because if you say, does anybody have any questions? Here's what you have to do. Yes, let me find my mouse. Now I need to find the unmute button. For some reason, every time I click the unmute button, it doesn't work the first time. So I have to click it twice. And so that's taken time. If they decide that they want to type something into chat, well, that takes even longer. Now they got to grab their mouse, find the mouse on the screen. Okay, click it into the thing and start typing the question. And if you just leave an undetermined amount of time for them to talk, it's kind of like when you're approaching a yellow light and you're driving and you're like, do I have enough time? Do I not have enough time? I don't know. Can I make the light? You want to give them a visual cue. So what I'll say is, first of all, always ask a question in group view, not on screen share, right? Same reason where until the first question is being asked, nobody else wants to ask it, right? So right away, they're going to be judging the room going, ooh, okay, Miguel looks like he's typing. Okay, I think he's asking a question. Serena's totally reaching for the mouse. Okay, I feel validated. I can ask a question. The other thing that I do is I shut up and I go, does anybody have any questions? A few things go through the person's mind. I don't think I have enough time to type a question. Wait a minute, she looks distracted. What is she doing? She's going for her water? Oh, that'll take at least a few seconds. I've got time. I can totally do this. And then you kind of train them to know that I do give you space. Because if you say, does anyone have any questions? Okay, cool, let's move on. You've broken their trust and they'll just not bother asking you questions in the future. So give them a visual cue, a coffee or whatever the case is. The last one that I need to do, and Roger, I know we're probably running low on time, is the verbal confirmation or affirmation, if you will. So have you ever met someone, maybe for the first time, or maybe it's your best friend, maybe it's your partner, and you just get into those conversations where it's like they say something and I say something and they say something and oh man, it's just like musical and I just love the bouncing back and forth. That's impossible to do on Zoom. And the reason being is, even though it sounds really instant, when I say something and the screen moves and my mouth goes, it's actually like a 1/2 second delay. Could be up to 4-second delay though, depending on each other's internet connection. So here's the really fun dance that you do, okay? So let's see. Me and Jillian, we're going to have a conversation and Jillian starts saying something and I sense that the sentence is about to end. And so I go, mm-hmm. And then by the time Jillian hears the mm-hmm on her end, she's already started saying something. And then she goes, oh, sorry, did you have a question? No, I was just agreeing with you. Okay, you're sure? Yeah, totally. And Jillian goes, where was I? What was I talking about? And that is called the Zoom dance. It's like when you're walking down the sidewalk and someone's like, oh, sorry, are you going this way? You going that way? So mm-hmms can actually come across as being a jerk. Because would you stop interrupting me every time I go to say another sentence? You're like, right in there. There was a time where I did an interview with somebody. I actually had to go, I think I hear some background noise there. I need to mute you. And it was because it was incessant with the mm-hms. She feels like she's giving me confirmation that she loves what I'm saying. She's in agreement. She's following along. Meanwhile, I'm going, just stop it already. I can't hear myself think. Thrown me completely off. That means you need to come up with a different visual affirmation to the people that you're talking to, because you don't want to come across as interruptive, disruptive, kind of not caring what they have to say. So I call it the bobblehead, but there's a lot of things you can do. You can't just go, because I sit in a rocking chair a lot of the time. So you could just be rocking. They don't know, right? They're going, are they agreeing with me, disagreeing with me? I tend to turn my head and go, mm-hmm. I'm big at facial expressions, as you've probably noticed. Not everybody is, but I try to do that. But the other one is, remember, if it's not in frame, it doesn't exist. A lot of people are thumbs uppers. Yeah, totally. Problem is if you're doing a thumbs up down here, they're like, what's going on over there? Like, they don't know. You feel like you're giving them this, like, yes, you're amazing, thumbs up. And they're like, what is with this chick? It's like she's just, I call it like the Dwayne from The Office, where you're just like stoic. Meanwhile, I'm giving like thumbs up like crazy under the table. And they're like, I can't see you. So figure out what is your thing with your face, your hands, and then make sure that it's in frame. That is just the start of this new adventure of Zoom. And like I mentioned, by the time that we get rolling and all comfortable with this stuff, you're going to be needing to learn how to talk through holograms. So stay tuned for that. And I see there is a question in here about what do you do with kids? Well, I teach some really cool stuff. So I have two organizations. It's a great segue onto this slide here. So Biz Kids is my registered charity. We are all about challenging the education system, not just the what they're being educated in, but the how and the why. And everything we do is about relevancy and real hands-on experience. We don't believe in teaching people theory. We believe in demonstrating it and having them take action on it. So we often use entrepreneurship, where we have kids as young as 7 years old launching their own businesses, making real money, interacting with the public, hearing the general public say no to them. It's amazing. It builds the resiliency like nobody's business. And then we also have BBK Network. That is launching in September with its next cohort. Basically, kind of like when you say, oh, what's your kid in? And you're like, oh, they're in karate and piano. It insinuates you've put them in something and they just keep going. That's what the BBK Network is. It is the Innovators Academy, and it is an academy that runs all year round. You put your child in, they're taking on real world projects in their local communities, but inside their classroom, they're sitting in there with a kid from Florida and a kid from Texas and a kid from Ontario and BC. And we're helping kids to gain perspective about the world, not just their local community, and understand that everyone connects differently, communicates differently, the normalcies are different, and then taking active collectively across North America to have social impact, to start businesses, to create innovations and things of that nature. So that is what I do with kids. If anyone has any questions, please feel welcome to type them in. I'm just checking out, see what's in the chat here.
There's a question from Laura.
Yeah. So conference calls are like this: no visual to know the cue to talk or not to talk. Yeah, silence becomes the cue. Tell, show, do. Should we not be using some Zoom etiquette before we connect? Yes. Now, did you have something specific in mind with Zoom etiquette, Laura? But I will say this, with Zoom, you all now are empowered with this information. You have no excuses. You can now build trust with people, right? But remember, don't penalize others because they're not making eye contact with you. Don't penalize others because they're black screened or using virtual backgrounds or going mm-hmms or whatever other things that, they ask if you have any questions and they give you no time to answer, these are things that we're learning very quickly, but slowly at the same time. And so share this with others. Don't penalize people with this. And most of all, practice it, because none of this will come intuitively to you, because you have hundreds and hundreds of years of evolution on how we build trust and connection ingrained in your brain that you're going to have to overwrite. So practice, 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 go easy on yourself, and hopefully this helps. And is there a standard or core or anything goes etiquette? I think it's kind of like in-person events. If I'm meeting with a girlfriend for a coffee, there's different etiquette than when I'm going for a job interview, than when I'm going, with my team. But one thing that I would say is with my team, having that understanding that we are working in our homes, everybody's going through different stresses. And really, I think, let's use a suit and tie as an example. You know, there's still people who will penalize someone because they show up to a meeting without a suit and tie, whereas other people are like, I don't even wear socks anymore. I just have my loafers on and I show up. And, you know, styles change, etiquettes change. I was doing the speaking tour and I was wearing, every seminar, I wore a t-shirt that had a positive saying, and it said, good things are coming on my shirt. And it was a seminar that happened to have 1,000 people on it. There was people who said, I love your shirt. Where did you buy it? And we actually had 2 ladies go and buy the shirt I was wearing. But I also had a handful of people saying, she's telling us to build trust online, but I can't even trust her because look at what she's wearing. And I was like, wow, right? So you're never going to please everyone. And I think etiquette goes even further than Zoom. I think it's just, how are we perceiving? So it goes back to my personal mission statement, changing the way we value humans in society. Are we valuing them because of their car, because they got A's in grade 5, because they have an MBA, or because they own millions of dollars in property? What are the things that we're valuing in humans? And are those serving society? Is it serving them and their mental health and their fulfillment? And is it serving me being so judgmental all the time? So I think there's 2 sides to this. I just taught you a whole bunch of stuff that theoretically shouldn't matter. If I'm looking into the camera or not looking into the camera, why should that matter? Right? But the reality is that if it's something that can give you a bit of a leg up and help them to really receive you because they have all of that written coding in their mind, and it's going to help them hear your message, which is then going to serve them in their life, why wouldn't we do that? But at the same time, making sure that we're keeping in check with ourselves and how we feel valuable. And if somebody judges you because Jillian commented, oh, my bad hair day, I have a hat on, who cares? Jillian, it's a killer hat. Be proud, right? Like, I don't want to penalize Jillian because she's comfortable. Are you kidding me? Right? So when it comes to etiquette, I always say, why do you feel this is a rule? Now, if somebody comes late all the time, yeah, that's probably going to throw things off, right? That's an etiquette. Show up on time because we're all trying to accomplish a goal. But if it's, you know, don't wear yoga pants, I'm quitting the company because that's all I live in these days, right?
Leah, we have to wrap her up now.
Sure.
I'm reminded of the saying that all behavior modification begins with awareness, and you have certainly made us aware of some of the things we consciously and unconsciously do when we are on Zoom. And I want you to know with certainty that I will never again look at a webcam the same way.
Done my job.
Thank you. You've done your job and then some. Thank you very, very much for heightening our awareness that there is such a thing as good and not so good, effective and not so effective behavior online, on Zoom, to build trust. And thank you on behalf of EIN's 78,000 members.
You're welcome. And please, everyone, feel welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect.